The scripture reading this morning is from the book of John, chapter 1, verses 35 through 51. The first disciples of Jesus. The next day, John again was standing with two of his disciples, and as he watched Jesus walk by, he exclaimed, "Look, here is the Lamb of God." The two disciples heard them say this, and they followed Jesus. When Jesus turned and saw them following, he said to them, "What are you looking for?" And they said to him, "Rabbi," which translated means teacher, "where are you staying?" He said to them, "Come and see." They came and saw where he was staying, and they remained with him that day. It was about 4:00 in the afternoon. One of the two who heard John speak and followed him was Andrew, Simon Peter's brother. He first found his brother Simon and said to him, "We have found the Messiah," which is translated anointed. He brought Simon to Jesus, who looked at him and said, "You are Simon, son of John. You are to be called Cephas," which is translated Peter. The next day, Jesus decided to go to Galilee. He found Philip and said to him, "Follow me." Now Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him about whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus, son of Joseph from Nazareth." Nathanael said to him, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" Philip said to him, "Come and see." When Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him, he said of him, "Here is truly an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." Nathanael asked him, "Where did you come to know me?" And Jesus answered, "I saw you under the fig tree before Philip called you." Nathanael replied, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." Jesus answered, "Do you believe because I told you that I saw you under the fig tree? You will see greater things than these." And he said to him, "Very truly, I tell you, you will see heaven opened and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man." Here ends our reading today.
And may God add hope and understanding to the reading of his holy word. Thank you, Alice. How many of you remember back to when you were learning to drive? Remember how you learned to drive? Yeah. And who taught you how to drive? Who taught you how to drive? You learned by the bumper cars at Six Flags. Thank you for sharing. And what time will you be driving out of the parking lot today? Okay, all right. Who else taught you to drive? Your fathers, yeah. Who learned from their mom? Julius did, yeah. Marilyn did, and Marge did, yeah. How many of you had driver's ed in school? Yeah. I had driver's ed in school, but I really didn't pay attention because I knew it was going to be a long time before my father allowed any of us girls to drive, because my brothers had played bumper cars so many times after they had gotten their licenses that my father said, the girls aren't getting their licenses until they're 18. Well, I was 16 when I graduated high school, so I'm not paying attention a couple years before that when I took driver's ed, so I'm not paying attention to the rules of the road. Do you remember some of the rules of the road, the crazy rules that you had to learn from that little handbook in order to take that test? Julius, what do you remember? Hand signals. Yes. What else? K-turns. Yes. Parallel parking. Yeah. I know. Yeah. So we all had to learn basically the same rules of the road, right? That you drive on the right-hand side, that those red things mean you actually have to stop, that at a yellow light you're supposed to stop if you can, not speed up to get through it. We all learned basically the same rules of the road, and we all stood in line at the Department of Motor Vehicles and were sweating it out when you had to go for that check ride with the person, and they would tell you to go this way and that, and the anxiety of being a new person on the road. It's intimidating, isn't it, to be a new person on the road. And even after you got your license, most of us were feeling pretty anxious when we first started to put those rules to use. But you all learned pretty much the same rules of the road. And that's fine as long as you stay in the state that you got your license. But did you know in a lot of different states, there's a lot of different rules that you might not predict? Yeah. In Florida, I was driving and I had my blinker on. There were a number of cars behind me, and I was turning left into a church, actually, to see a friend of mine. And a person came barreling up on my left in the passing zone and hit me and just devastated my car. And it was a huge accident. And as I was coming out of the CT scan at the hospital, a trooper was there to give me a ticket. Because in Rhode Island, in Florida, the law is if you're making a left turn, it's incumbent on you to make sure nobody was passing you. Yeah, it's an absurd law, but that is the law. Okay, so there's a lot of crazy laws in a lot of states. I thought I'd share a few of the funniest ones with you. So in Little Rock, Arkansas, the police will tell you that no person shall sound the horn on a vehicle at any place where cold drinks or sandwiches are served after the 9 o'clock hour. If you're going to be in Montana, it might be helpful to know that it is still illegal to leave sheep unescorted in your truck. In Minnesota, it's illegal to cross state lines with a duck on your head. No word yet on whether chickens are still authorized headgear. In Tennessee, there's a law that prohibits shooting at animals from your car unless the animal happens to be a whale. If you see a whale on the side of the road, by all means, blast away. Bad news for elderly folks. In Idaho, it's illegal to ride a motorcycle over the age of 88. In Illinois, it's unlawful to change clothes while inside a car with curtains drawn except during a fire. In Michigan, it's illegal to sit in the middle of the road and read the newspaper. And decades ago, it was illegal for a woman to drive down Main Street in Waynesboro, Virginia, without her husband walking in front of the vehicle waving a red flag. And last, but certainly not least, in San Francisco, car wash owners are restricted from drying off vehicles with used underwear. And all God's people said, ew. So it's hard for us to imagine, any circumstance where you'd be using a duck for a hat, or perhaps driving a camel on the highway, which, by the way, is explicitly illegal in California. But there are still plenty of rules for the road that are essential if you're going to make it safely to your destination, all right? So the key is to translate the rules of the road from the driver's manual into practical experience so that obeying them becomes first nature rather than even second nature to you. And it takes practice because no one will be running out in front of you waving a red flag to warn others of your approach, all right? And the traffic laws in Jesus' day were a whole lot less stringent and a lot less weird because, of course, most people walked everywhere they went. And we know that Jesus and his followers probably walked thousands of miles during his lifetime, and especially during his 3 years of active ministry. As he traveled, he began to define, though, a different set of rules for the road, for those who would follow him on those dusty ancient paths, and for those of us who might seek to follow him today. And those rules may seem kind of odd and may seem kind of countercultural and may seem difficult to understand at first. It takes practice, just like the rules of the road in town. And the story we heard read so beautifully today in John's gospel illustrates that his rules of the road, Jesus' rules of the road, are timeless, and they are vitally important if we are to stay on the right track as disciples and not end off the side of the road, okay? The story, you'll remember, opens with Jesus on the road from the place of his baptism, which was likely on the Jordan River near the Dead Sea, and he was going back to Galilee, his home territory, and he and his people would have traversed this road many, many times during the years that they would be together and the years before. It was the common road to travel back and forth to Jerusalem for festivals and other special occasions. And having been baptized by John and commissioned for his mission on earth, Jesus traveled north. He picked up Andrew and Simon Peter on the way, and he was traveling with them. And even though Galilee would be their ultimate destination, we know that he had a much longer journey in mind when they set out. Bethsaida, the hometown of Andrew and Peter, it was there that Jesus encountered the people that he would first teach the rules of the road to. Three rules that we'll do well to remember, that these followers of his were compelled to adhere to if they were to become recognized as his disciples. So we could argue that maybe these three rules of the road that I'm going to share with you today are probably the most important ones that we can call to mind every day. And I want you actually, you spend a lot of time in your cars. I want you this week, as you're traveling in your car, to think about these three, okay? So what was the first rule on the road that Jesus gave to his disciples? It was follow me. Follow me. Follow me. It wasn't a suggestion. It wasn't just a good idea. It wasn't even a request. It was a command. Follow me. So when you're in the road, traveling this week, I want you to be thinking, follow me. Am I following you? Am I following you? Help me to follow you. Okay, follow me. Philip was the first to hear this clearly stated rule of John's gospel, and although we hear Jesus using that same command elsewhere in the gospels, unlike in the other Gospels where disciples are dropping their nets or getting up from tables and beginning their journey with Jesus, Philip's first response was to go and get another person. So compelling were the words of Jesus, follow me, that he knew that he needed to share that with others. He knew that. And so compelling it was that he thought everybody would need to observe that rule if they also would meet their final eternal destination. And the first person that Philip told was Nathanael, who interestingly isn't even named in any of the other Gospels, which might lead us to believe that when Jesus spoke those words and Philip shared them with another, that it wasn't just another of the 12, but that it was a message and a command meant for everyone. So Nathanael maybe represents every one of us. And so he told him, follow me. And Philip immediately saw in Jesus the truth of what the prophets and the forerunners of Jesus and all of the great desert fathers, all of that they had been witnessing that was coming into the world. Philip recognized that in this Jesus. And in recognizing the power of who Jesus was, he knew the urgency and the immediacy of needing to gather others because he knew that Jesus was the way. Okay? And in other words, Jesus was the one in whom all the ancient scriptural rules of the road had been pointing. Right? And it becomes clear to us that Following Jesus means choosing only one direction, one person to follow, and not wavering from that path. Okay, it's really easy to be tossed to and fro. Paul, in his writings, talked about being buffeted by the winds of change. But Nathaniel and Philip were the first, really, to say, no, I need to do everything I can to stay on just this one road. Just this one road. And following Jesus represents a major deviation for them and for us from traveling the well-traveled, well-worn roads with the rules that everyone else in society is following. Okay? So it's hard. It's hard to do. It's easier to follow the crowd than it is to follow just one. It's easier, but less fulfilling, less rewarding. Later in John's gospel, Jesus would say, I am the way, the truth, and the life. He was calling people to himself to follow on that one way that would lead straight to the heart of God. Straight to the heart of God. And too often, I think we've defined the rules of Christian faith in terms of what we believe about Jesus, instead of focusing on actually following him and doing as he does. Information is important. Knowing about Jesus is important, but knowing Jesus is the heart of discipleship. Knowing Jesus. Some people think of a Christian as somebody who necessarily believes certain things, believes that Jesus is the Son of God, or that Mary was a virgin, or that the Pope is infallible, or that all the other religions in the world just have it wrong. Some people think of a Christian as somebody who necessarily does certain things, like going to church, or reading the Bible, or getting baptized, or giving up liquor and tobacco, doing a good deed every day. But I think John Buchanan, a wonderful writer, writing in Christian Century, shared this. Jesus did not ask Peter, James, and John to subscribe to a set of theological propositions, nor did he want them to feel anything. He simply said, follow me. To decide to get up from what they were doing and go with him. That's what it means to be a Christian. That's what it means. We don't all have to believe the same things about Jesus and his life, but we need to follow him. He said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. He didn't say any particular ethic or doctrine or religion was the way and the truth and the life. He said that he and following him was the way, the truth, and the life. In calling his disciples, he was acting not legalistically, but relationally. Relationally. His first instruction is not, here is how you must live. It is, follow me. Follow me. And so the only way I think that we can know about what Jesus is about and following him is the second rule, which is come and see. Come and see. Come and see. Philip responded to Nathanael's skepticism about whether anything good could possibly come from Nazareth with an invitation, come and see. He didn't try to argue with him or make a defense of Jesus. He just simply said, come and see. So if you're concerned about trying to introduce or invite other people to Jesus because, geez, I don't know what to tell them, I don't know, they're going to ask me questions I can't answer, they're going to expect me to know more about the Bible than I do, I can squelch all that. Just tell them, come and see. Come and see. Come and see. Come into fellowship with me on Sunday morning and experience what I experience. Come and be a part of our fellowship and experience the love of true community when you have hardship in your life. Come and see. Okay, so now you're out of excuses. Now you're out of excuses for, oh God, I don't want to invite people because I don't know what to tell them about what to believe, and I don't want to tread on their beliefs, and I don't want to offend them by telling them something that they don't believe. Nope, come and see. Come and see. And when you're in a difficult place and you're having those inevitable doubts that we all have about whether our faith is well placed or whether God is going to come through for us, I want you to be thinking about that. Just, you don't need to know how or why. You can tell yourself, just come and see. Just keep following and see. Philip responded to that skepticism, come and see. He knew that his skeptical friend would respond best to an invitation, that same invitation that Jesus had offered to Andrew and to Peter. That's the same invitation we have to offer to others. Just come and see. Come and see. And when Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him, he said of him, "Here is truly an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." And Nathanael asked him, "Well, how do you even know me? How could you say that about me?" And he says, "I saw you under the fig tree before Philip called you." You see, in Jesus, we're all invited to follow the one that already knows who we are. We don't have to introduce ourselves to Jesus. He knows us. He knows us. When we come to Jesus, when we invite others to come and see, it's with that confidence that Jesus is already ready to come and dwell with them. We're just inviting them to come and experience it. Philip would become a great evangelist because he saw everybody as simply needing an invitation. And that's what he spent his life on the road doing, inviting other people to come and see what he had come to know. And one of the key rules of the road for being a disciple is having a desire and a way of inviting people to come and meet Jesus. And so you have that. You have that. Just come and see. And I want you to be thinking this week as you're in your car and driving about, who can I invite to come and see? Who needs to hear that? Who needs to know that there is something here in faith, in community, in fellowship, in learning, in mission, in sharing, and in serving that they've never experienced before? Who needs that invitation? And the third rule as we follow Jesus, he said, expect that you will see greater things than even what you've already experienced in me. But like the best is yet to come. The best is yet to come. Nathanael was amazed that Jesus knew him, had seen him under the fig tree, had given him an example of where he had known him, where he had seen him. That was undeniable. Yeah, I was under the fig tree. And he saw me. Jesus said, if you think that's something, wait till what you see next. Wait till what you see next. And those who accepted Jesus' invitation in those earliest days witnessed healings and miracles and the transfiguration and even resurrections of the dead. And I want you to be thinking, since you responded to that call, follow me, and since you've been coming and seeing, what are those amazing things that you have witnessed, that you have experienced? What are the healings that you have seen in this community, in this congregation, in your family, in yourself, that have reminded you of the goodness of God and of the presence of Christ? I want you to be thinking about that, because you have experienced greater things as you have followed Jesus. We all have. And we spend a lot of time romancing other parts of our lives. Like when we get together with friends or family. I spent a delightful day yesterday with my cousin, Ada, and her daughter, Lee, and her husband, Mark, and we were going through family pictures and things, and you know, you do that romancing of, oh, remember this time when we were here, or we were there. And you do that with your beloved. You say, oh, remember when we met, remember when this was happening, remember when we went here, remember our wedding, remember our honeymoon, remember meeting these friends. We tend not to do that, though, about our relationship with God. We don't seem to reminisce with God much, you know, to speak in our prayer time with God about, God, I just am recalling like when you were there for me and you brought me through this hard time and you placed me on a high, dry place when I didn't know how I would get through the morning. we need to start romancing those memories of how God has come through for us. Remember when I was just at the end of my rope and the phone rang and it was a friend. I remember when I was out and I was just so depressed and despondent and I was trying to put on a brave face and somebody just looked at me and said, "You need a hug." That's the Lord working in our lives. Let's romance those times when God has shown up for us in powerful ways. And that just, you don't necessarily have to share those moments with others, but they cement for you the truth of God's presence such that you are able to make an authentic invitation to come and see. Because people will sense in you, you have experienced something that I have not. And I want to know what it is. Okay, so follow me, come and see, and romance God's presence in your life. Reflect on it, recollect it, okay, as you do with times when a friend has shown up for you. Many Christians seem content with following the rules that they are just the easiest to obey, but the disciples learned that following Jesus is a journey filled with strange and exciting opportunities to rewrite the other rules in their lives. All of the things that are happening in the world that others appeal to as right and good. When we are grounded in the rules of Christ, in the rules of following his direction, we can have a much more profound influence on the rules of society that others appeal to. We have an ability to influence that. All right? The stronger we get in our understanding that, no, following Christ's way is a better way, the more committed we are to speaking truth about the ways that are not of God. And the more powerful we become with our confidence about to whom we owe our allegiance, which is God. So when you're tooling around in your cars and trying to obey the rules of the actual streets, I want you to be thinking about those things. And then think about what are some of the rules of our society that we might be challenged to break for the coming of God's kingdom? What are some of the rules that seem to be overwhelming our society that we recognize have dissonance with our desire to just follow Jesus? And what are we willing to do to break society's rules for the coming of God's kingdom by just following Jesus? Amen.